Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are diving into something absolutely fascinating, the third way. And look, right off the bat, we're not talking about some political manifesto here. No, we are looking at the literal architecture of the Ahuramazda engine. It's this incredibly deep philosophical and really a thermodynamic blueprint for civilizational progress. It turns out, ancient understandings of the cosmos, they just might hold the exact mechanical blueprint we need to solve some of the deepest crises we're facing today. Let's get into it.
So this really demands a massive shift in how we look at things. What if the political chaos we see today, specifically, within the current political discourse in Iran, what if that isn't a political failure at all? What if it's actually a thermodynamic one? Think of a society literally like a battery, right? A battery needs both a positive and a negative terminal to create that tension necessary to actually generate power. So when we look around at all this endless factionalism and total gridlock, what we are actually witnessing is a thermodynamic battery failure. We've completely lost the proper tension required to move forward, and we're just left with a dead engine.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our rigorous intellectual roadmap for today. 1. The thermodynamic battery failure. 2. Physics of the Ahuramazdan engine. 3. The Mahestan historical anchor. 4. The Amisha Sepanta methodology. 5. The 2026 civilizational trap. And finally 6. A light of reason discovery.
Starting right off with Section 1, the thermodynamic battery failure, a dead engine in modern discourse. The core premise here is actually pretty mind-blowing. We so often view conflict as destructive, right? But it's actually a completely necessary civilizational tool. I mean, without opposing forces, you literally have zero energy. So the failure of modern discourse isn't that we have opposing sides. The failure is that we just haven't built an engine to harness that opposition into actual forward momentum. To really grasp this, we have to recognize that the third way is exactly that. It's a thermodynamic and civilizational engine of discovery. And, okay, to be incredibly precise here, this cosmological truth relies strictly, and I mean strictly, on the geocentric planetary geometry-based methodology of citystats.co.uk and Ahuramazdan It has absolutely zero to do with Vedic or sidereal astrology. None. It's this exacting geometric analysis of universal forces applied directly to human civilization, specifically designed to synthesize opposing ideas into higher truths. Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. Physics of the Ahuramazdan engine, Ohrmazd, Ahriman, and thermodynamics. This is where things get really cool, because we are mapping ancient Ohrmazdan cosmology directly onto the fundamental laws of physics. Think of Ohrmazd as representing the first law of thermodynamics. That initial energy, the absolute spark of inspiration and creation. Conversely, Ahriman represents the second law, that inevitable, unavoidable pull toward entropy, dissipation, and chaos. And here is the major breakthrough. This transition from Ohrmazd to Ahriman, from order to chaos, it isn't a failure, not at all. It is literally the essential biological and cosmological engine of life itself. We are meant to experience this entropy, and we're meant to navigate it using our free will. Chaos isn't some cosmic punishment. It's literally the raw material we need for the absolute next phase of creation. And that brings us to the ultimate synthesis here, Ahuramazda. This is the higher truth, the totally new energy that gets generated when you successfully balance those two forces, the inspiration of Ohrmazd and the entropy of Ahriman. You see, when we use our reason to analyze opposing points of view, when we balance that initial spark against the pull of chaos, we don't just survive the mess, we discover Ahuramazda. And this reason discovery, it becomes the absolute bedrock, the solid foundation for the next advancing stage of creation. The cycle doesn't just end, it elevates. Shifting gears a bit, let's look at Section 3, the Mahestan historical anchor, ancient solutions for thermodynamic failures. Now, what's really interesting about this is the empirical historical evidence from the great Achaemenid Empire. Look at Cyrus the Great. He faced a region totally paralyzed by the fear of a captive Jewish population. But instead of fighting that entropy with force, which, let's be honest, just creates more heat and friction, he applied a thermodynamic solution. He used tolerance. He freed them without bloodshed, completely transforming terror into loyalty. He quite literally generated order out of chaos. And then later, you have Darius the Great facing a collapsing, completely disunited empire after the death of Cambyses. And his solution? It wasn't a sword. He convened a forum to deliberately gather conflicting views. He let the truth emerge from the noise, using those opposing forces to actually generate stability. And that forum Darius convened, that was the Mahestan, But don't just think of it as a parliament. It was essentially a perfectly designed thermodynamic containment chamber. Its explicit built-in purpose was to safely gather all those conflicting views, channel the intense tension between Ohrmazda and Ahriman, and basically restore civilizational stability. So the Mahestan really serves as our primary historical anchor for how we absolutely must approach and solve the battery failure of Iranian politics today. We don't need just one single echoing voice. We need a chamber strong enough to hold all the voices to actually generate light. Moving right along to Section 4, the Mahestan methodology. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. And this brilliantly illustrates the Mahestan process. It's essentially a progressive three-step technical methodology, an engine for our daily reasoning and societal structures. Step 1 is good thoughts. This means you actively embrace the chaos of conflicting ideas to find the good in both the inspiration of Ohrmazd and the entropy of Ahriman. Step 2, good words. This is the debate stage, refining our discourse to translate reasoned thoughts into actual agreements. And step 3, good deeds. This is the implementation phase. You seek that balance to turn the discord into concrete action. It's the full, complete transformation of the Ahuramazda of thought into the Ahuramazda of deed.
Okay, now we hit Section 5, the 2026 civilizational trap. This is what happens when that energy flow completely stops.
To really understand this trap, we have to look incredibly objectively, like highly impartially at early 2026 to analytically observe what happens when this thermodynamic engine breaks down. So in December 2025, the Yalda celebrations spark this genuinely beautiful moment of national joy. But by mid-January 2026, political agendas ended up weaponizing that cultural moment. The sources show us that calls for opposition from various figures, including Trump and Pahlavi, really fed into this dynamic. Now, we're not taking sides here, we're just analyzing the mechanics. And the tragic aftermath of using that moment purely for opposition rather than synthesis, it was a catastrophic conflict that claimed thousands of lives on both sides. This is an analytical observation of a thermodynamic failure happening in real time.
So the crucial point we really need to take away from our source material is profound. Quote, when you use a cultural gathering to oppose others rather than to discover a higher understanding, you stop the flow of Ahuramazdan energy and invite destruction. Treating conflict just as a weapon to destroy an enemy rather than seeing it as a completely necessary tool for discovery and synthesis, well, that is a deadly civilizational trap. It shuts down the engine, it halts the flow of energy entirely, and it literally just leaves society in the dark.
Finally, let's pivot to Section 6, a light of reasoned discovery, resurrecting the civilizational glow.
To resurrect this thriving spirit, we really have to look back at an incredible lineage we have. Proto-Elamite traditions, Sumerian foundations, Achaemenid principles, Sasanian history, and Parthian structured forms. The common unifying thread running through all these ancient traditions is that they thrived precisely because they embraced diversity. They didn't try to just crush opposing views. Instead, they placed them within structured containment chambers, very much like the Mahestan, allowing that natural tension to generate a much higher cultural and societal output. They truly understood the physics of civilization.
And we have to heavily reinforce this point. The light of this civilization glows because of reasoned discovery, not by just blindly opposing external enemies. The true third way we've been talking about is powered strictly by internal reasoning and balanced discovery. By intentionally nurturing a culture where every single voice is heard, and where every difference is carefully balanced against another, we stop creating mere opposition. Instead, we actually create a civilization that generates its own light through constant structured synthesis.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one incredibly vital, provocative question. Will we continue to just drain our civilizational battery through endless, pointless opposition? Or will we finally use that tension to spark the absolute next stage of our creation? You know, the Ahuramazdan engine is literally built into the very fabric of physics and history. But the choice to turn the key, to engage that Mahestan methodology, and to actually embrace the tension to find a higher truth, that is entirely ours. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep reasoning, and keep discovering.